I am recording. Oh, wait. No, I'm not. Hold on.
All right.
Shit. That's the wrong button.
We are live, though.
Okay,
That was quick. Last couple of times I have a bit of a connection issue, but it seems to be okay.
All right. I am recording.
You're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
We have another very special episode. This time we are covering Salem's Lot, the book, which came out in 1975. We're also covering the 1979 movie, and then I'll talk a bit about the 2004 miniseries. Well, I guess the Salem's Lot 79 was also a miniseries on CBS.
Yeah.
The 2004 one was on TNT miniseries.
That's the one with Rutger Hauer and Rob Lowe and
Yeah.
what was the guy?
I keep on saying Donald Pleasance, but no, it's
Donald Sutherland. Yeah.
well, it was Donald Sutherland, but then there is the guy in Star Trek who played the guy who created Warp Drive.
Oh, guy from Babe.
James Cromwell.
James Cromwell. Yep.
Yeah. But I know we meant to do this for American Creed Factory, but we'll do it here. And I know Nathan wanted to talk about Salem's Lot. I have a brief history with it, which they had it in the book in the library at school, because I never ate lunch, so I just went to the library, and then I attempted to read Salem's Lot, but I got bored with it. But that's doing it now. It's kind of like, oh, that's the point. Nothing happens for like half the book because it's setting up all the people in the town that you're going to kill. But what's your personal history with Salem's Lot?
I like Stephen King books. I get into a lot of his stuff. Some of his early stuff, like I read Carrie. For some reason, like Salem's Lot and some of the Bachman books, I just kind of skipped over. I don't know why. I didn't revisit them. I read Salem's Lot when I was like 14, and I remember thinking it was a little slow, and then it kind of hit the accelerator, and then it was almost like too quick. It's like, wait, who is this guy? What did he do? And so I had a distracted reading of it, and then I reread it recently because we were talking, and it's a really good book. That's like one of his best books. Is like I realized it's like I'm not that familiar with that one. So yeah, I reread it recently for the show, and but yeah, I've generally most of the Stephen King stuff I've read now. There's some of his short story stuff where it came out on like unusual formats or something where I just haven't stumbled across it, but because I know there's like a epilogue to this called One for the Road, which I'm going to read.
Well, I did the audiobook, and there is an epilogue, but I'm not sure if it's that one. It's basically just them hunting vampires in Guatemala or something.
Yeah.
Or that might be in the movie. In the movie, it's Guatemala. I'm not sure where the epilogue is here.
Yeah, because I think it starts out at the same place it ends in the book, but because it starts out in like it's somewhere. I always thought it was Mexico, but here in the movie they said Guatemala. So, but there's some big differences between the movie and the book.
Yeah. There's a lot of contraction of characters and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So.
and it had to be because you only had 6 hours, I think.
No, it's 3 hours, but
3 hours.
But that's without commercials. So.
Yeah, so it was, but it was a little different. But yeah, this was actually a fun book. I mean, it's a book from the mid '70s, so it's like some of the references and the people, some of the things they talk about or whatever, a little dated. But yeah, it's like,
yeah, but it still felt modern because I don't know how like what Stephen King's necessarily like his generation is, or maybe he's like an uncommon for his generation, but like all the characters are written as like kind of like progressive thinkers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's all and all the because even you have stuff here like you have the sheriff being like, everything's going to hell because some kids liked a horror movie.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it doesn't. Although there's that part where like you have two doctors talking about aspirin, is like, we don't know why it works. Like, wait, a doctor's saying that? It's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, it's the miracle drug.
But also, Stephen King isn't a doctor, so or maybe a doctor literally told him that, and it's like, I'm putting that in a book.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, I've seen a lot of interviews with different authors with like when they research stories, and sometimes they'll like, oh yeah, I put that in the book, and then we went through edit and we did some post edit, and then someone pointed out to me, it's like, that's not exactly true. I said, but it's true enough for the story. As long as it's not like a big part of the story, they'll leave stuff in that's like, oh yeah, I mean, that's, it's like, it just sounded cool. It was just kind of like a throwaway line that sort of established, oh, this is how these characters think, or this is the stuff they learn about or whatever. And it doesn't, as long as it's
well,
not like a major thing.
also, I'm trying to like figure out the town where it's like, oh, it's a small town, and in the movie they say it's population 2,000, but it's like one of these Stephen King's and possibly like eccentrically and possibly small towns where it's like we're a small town, but we have a bar with a live band.
Yeah.
We have K through 12 education. We have a full on hospital. We have two like factories in town. It's like the small town, every day.
Yeah. Everyone works at the mill, and, it's New England. Maybe that was New England in the 70s. I don't know. But yeah, Stephen King, like, there seems to be a lot of details. Or it's like, well, we can go to the university and ask the guy, and it's like 15 minutes away. And yeah, there's a lot of like, this is like I don't know if you ever read Carrie. Carrie's a very different book from this. This is Salem's Lot, for being his second book. I think his second big book.
Was Carrie his first?
Yeah,
okay.
I believe so. The order I read them, it is. There could be like interstitial stuff or stuff he wrote for magazines. I'm not including.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of, because technically this was a short story in some weird magazine before it became, when he was in college, before it became the book. But
well, this is something that like this establishes a lot of Stephen King tropes that you see in almost all of his other work after this. You have, the wise child is something that is in a lot of Stephen King books, where you have a kid who's like smarter than all the adults.
Yeah,
he has like a special insider intuition. Like in his latest book, or one of his more recent books, The Institute, like the kid was actually a genius, and the reason he was like taken to the Institute to be, whatever they were doing there, we'll talk about that some other time. It was like, oh, because he was so smart, because he like had a 160 IQ. But in a lot of Stephen King stories, it's always younger children, maybe teenagers even, or people kind of at that magic age of 10 to 12, which is, I think, was Stephen King's favorite part of his life, probably, because that's when he discovered books. And because he was a kid who was home a lot because he had like severe asthma or something. So it's like, yeah, he just read things all the time. And so this is kind of like, that's sort of a stand-in character for his youth. And then, of course, the main character is a writer, because that's what Stephen King knows how to do. And at that time, at the time he wrote, or when he came up for this idea and kind of finalized it, he was like a teacher at a school. Like, Stephen King was like an English teacher for a few years before he started writing seriously. And it's like, yeah, so these are the kind of familiar characters, and these characters are in almost all his books in some form or another. And this also sets this is the first book that kind of sets the concepts of the Stephen King multiverse, that ties in with the gunslinger and all the characters being in other novels or whatever. The terms mentioned here are like the white, the outer dark, those are mentioned in this book. And it's like, oh, that's straight out of the gunslinger. Like, they talk about the white is like a force for good, and the outer dark is like the forces that serve the Crimson King, which is like the multiverse's version of Satan. So yeah, this is like, and Father Callahan like shows up in a gunslinger book later, the same guy, who is
and
character.
Lots of explicit violence and weird sex stuff.
Yeah, oh yeah, always.
Staple of Stephen King. Yeah,
he's kind of got away from that in the last 10 years. There's not so much of that.
Yeah.
I think the apex of that was probably it. With like the weird sex stuff and all that. I was like, wow, that book's just covered in that. But yeah, this is like, oh yeah, this is where Stephen King, like, this seems to be the book that like founded his writing style, his characters.
But I mean, But back then he could do that stuff because people seem to be like, we can separate, the author can write terrible things and not reflect upon himself, or it's like nowadays you can't do that.
No, because anything you say that's like remotely controversial, it's like, oh, he's a pedophile, or he's a this or a that. It's like, no, he's like, this is imagination. This isn't real. And he's not glorifying it either. It's
No.
just like, oh, this is what some people do. It happens, and this is what these characters have to endure. But yeah, now you got to be like, I don't know. You just got to be circumspect in how you talk about things, or you just hit it on the head with a sledgehammer, which is not subtle or realistic either. It's just like, I'm putting this in my book to piss off X, Y, and Z. But yeah.
Now, have you ever read Bram Stoker's Dracula?
Yes, I have.
I have not. I just
It's an earlier style of writing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting because you know what's going to happen, and but yeah, it's definitely like an older type of.
I haven't even watched the Coppola movie.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I hear it's got some great and bad things spat out that are also great for being bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Truly, it's like seeing Anthony Hopkins and Keanu Reeves share a screen together at that stage in Keanu Reeves' career is an awe-inspiring experience. It's like, oh wow, this is completely two different kinds of acting going on here. It's like, oh, this is what happens when matter and antimatter collide. There's nothing wrong with Keanu Reeves now. It's just back then he was, I don't know, he just had a style of acting that didn't seem to like jibe with the Shakespeare guy.
Yeah. It was hard to do a Shakespearean accent when you still have like the surfer voice in the background of your mind.
Whoa. What does that? And you're like fading in and out of an English
A2,
accent.
Brutus.
Yeah. And like I said, you've got a real pitchy accent that you're fading in and out of, and you were called for the role at the last minute because somebody else didn't want to do it, and or couldn't or whatever. And it's
I don't know.
like you had no prep.
Was that before or after the the Robin Hood with Kevin Costner?
Oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, they could have just worn cowboy hats and that, and just it would have made sense. Like, okay, this is why. Because Kevin Costner is a great actor playing a certain kind of role, but yeah, casting him as Robin Hood was an odd choice.
I mean,
It was an odd movie.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't attempt to do like a British accent. It was just like,
no, he couldn't.
Yeah, it's like, was this American? But actually, I think because what's his name? Christian Slater was in that too. Did he didn't do an accent either, did he?
I'm not sure. I think they kind of developed something. I know in Game of Thrones they perfected it because everyone had a British accent in Game of Thrones, but it was a generic British accent. It wasn't like, it was like a London type normal sounding accent. They didn't try to do like crazy, like Peter Dinklage does a perfect British accent all the way through Game of Thrones.
Well, yeah, it's that they're just throwing out like the tis's and these and thous and stuff. It's normal speaking language, but it just has an accent to it. So,
but I think before that, like you really had to, because I know when Natalie Portman did V for Vendetta, like she had to work like months to learn that accent, and even then she even said it wasn't really that good, but it kind of works. She was playing a purely British character because that whole thing is just set in, you couldn't have Americans in it because America was having a civil war in that novel or comic or whatever. So it's like, so it took her a long time to do that. But yeah, some people, like guys like Kevin Costner, they would be, even if they could do it perfectly, it would be so jarring to see like, oh, what the hell happened? I mean, it's kind of like when people figured out the sheriff from The Walking Dead when he was doing like meet and greets or whatever. It's like, why does he have a British accent? It's like, well, because he's from the UK.
But Kevin Costner's like Harrison Ford. You don't hire Harrison Ford to be a character actor. You hire Harrison Ford to be Harrison Ford.
Yeah, because Harrison Ford's played foreigners a few times, but he's always like, because he was the captain on K-19.
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, he did do an accent there. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of, but he also delivered his dialogue just in Harrison Ford style.
Yeah, just gruff.
Yeah.
Get off my submarine.
Get off my damn submarine. And then who was the other? Oh, Liam Neeson was the sub commander or whatever. That wasn't a bad movie. A lot of
That's all
people
right.
didn't like it, but it's like I enjoy this. But anyway, Salem's Lot.
Yeah,
Um,
I was just bringing up Dracula because I never read it, so I didn't know if you had like if this was extra special having read Dracula because that's sort of like Stephen
I
King
mean,
was trying to make a contemporary Dracula for the
yeah,
time he was
that
writing.
was obviously the source material. Um, Now, where the book and the movie really like drift, and one key element is the Barlow, because in this movie or in the TV movie, Barlow is like the 30 Days of Night type vampire,
Yeah,
where he's just this destructive force of nature. In the book, he like writes notes to people, teasing them, and he talks to people. In the movie, he's just like the Nosferatu vampire.
yeah,
It's just like an eating machine. And it's like there doesn't seem to be anything driving him. Like Straker is the real bad guy in this,
yeah. Well,
whereas
yeah.
Barlow's just a force of nature that gets turned loose. Um, and this is so yeah, it's kind of different, but
But yeah, I think like the one thing I think all the miss the movie adaptations is that like they can't really get the length of time down because the whole thing about the book is just how the town is slowly dying. So like it takes place
yeah,
over I don't know if it's like weeks or months, but like that's what it feels like in the book, and then they have to like truncate that in the movie versions, and it's just like oh, all of a sudden everybody's dead or they're leaving town.
yep. Which in the book is like really effective because it's
Yeah,
cool. It's like, oh, this is like creeping horror.
yeah, yeah,
Like you know what's going on, you know like how it's going on, but it's like you still have to live through it through these characters, and so that makes it that makes it very interesting.
yeah. Because that's sort of like
um
what the whole thing is about. Is like evil comes to a town and it slowly dies and it sucks the life force out of the town. It's all a metaphor.
well, like how it opens is like Ben Mears, the writer, he comes back to town because this is where he grew up and lived for a while. I don't know how long. I don't know if he lived there through high school or what. I'm kind of like forget
Well,
what.
didn't was Burke? Didn't he teach him in school?
Yeah, yeah, but I don't know if he was like in high school or grade school. Probably high school because he said he was a good writer. So usually you don't do the good writing stuff till you're older.
I think in the TNT one they said that he was his teacher in middle school, and then Burke became a teacher in high school later on after he left or whatever.
Okay.
Um, I don't know. I think that's one thing. I don't know if that's here, but because I absorbed all this stuff, so now it's all mashed together, and I don't know which is which. So,
Yeah. But yeah, so you have like Ben Mears who had a horrifying experience at the house, which is like the center of evil in the town. What's the house called again? Damn it, the something house.
yeah, it's named after the guy who hung himself there.
Yeah,
So
hold on. Let me
Marston House.
okay, I had it down as the Marshall House. Okay, that's not right. Marston House. Let me write that down right. Supposed to have read this book, and I did.
I don't know.
That was about 2 months ago.
Well, let me check real quick. That could always.
No, I just checked myself. You're right.
Okay.
So Ben Mears, after the death of his wife on a motorcycle, they were on a motorcycle together, and he's essentially a widower, and his wife died.
He's also a vet, right? He served in Vietnam.
I think so. Yeah, I do remember that because I don't know if that comes up, but it's just like establishes like he's a guy that's seen stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but he's still the writer. You know, he's always the Stephen King writer,
yeah, yeah.
and so he's come to town to like exorcise the demons of his youth and write a book. Because I don't know what kind of books he's writing. I know they're described, but they seem like books like about like just like real that kind of existential weird writing that was going on then, kind of
Yeah.
like a oh, who would be the author? Like the guy who wrote Inherent Vice and that like Pynchon, like Gravity's Rainbow, that kind of stuff. he seemed to be writing stories seem to be in that vein where it's like, oh, it's a bunch of stuff happening to people, but really it's a reflection of our society. And of course, no one in the town gets it except
Yeah.
for his old teacher Matt and his love interest Susan Norton, um, who's she's what did she do? She was she worked at advertising.
Yeah, she did
She
like
had to come
layouts
back
for
to
advertising.
town,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so she's yeah.
Yeah, she worked in New York and they downsized, and because she didn't have a job anymore, she had to like go move back home.
Yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, her and yeah, his books. One of his books is called Air Dance, and then there's another one.
It's
Looking for
like
my notes. It's not really important, but it's
yeah,
just
it's like something daughter or something like that.
yeah. But yeah, so she's like again, she's like this small town girl who left and had to come back, um and like Ben's aunt worked at the Marston house, but he never talked about what went on there because the whole thing with the Marston house was like it was this family that they had like a business in town and they were kind of like shady people and there might have been bootleggers during Prohibition and but like the guy that the last Marston that lived there, the guy that hung himself was basically thought to have poisoned his wife and some other people, and so it's like a house that like and Ben Mears goes into the house as a boy and he either really sees or hallucinates or something. He actually sees the guy hanging, and it's like a horror because the kids dare him to go into the house and he does because
Yeah.
his house is dilapidated, and so he sees this horrible thing in there and affects him the rest of his life. And now
Uh,
his life is kind of in a shambles because his wife is dead and he's trying to come up with new ideas.
so the fate bibliography for Ben Mears is Conway's Daughter, Air Dance, and Billy Said Keep Going.
Okay, okay. I know there were three. I remember two. Okay, I have to read those sometimes in an alternate universe. So yeah, this place it's called Jerusalem's Lot, but it's locally known as Salem's Lot. The town is, and so that's kind of interesting. It turns out that I guess the town was named after a pig, but that's not really explored until the post the this a few one for the road, the kind of post short story about what happens after Salem's Lot. So
Yeah.
I haven't read that yet. I just like a factoid I picked up.
All right.
Yeah, and I guess the house was like full of booby traps and ways to kill people when the police investigated Marston's suicide. So yeah, it was a bad it was a bad thing.
Left a shadow over the town.
Yeah. And then Ben Mears like he grabbed a snow globe before he left the house, which like all this stuff about like the evil house and hallucinating and snow globes all comes up later in Stephen King books.
Yeah.
It's all this is all like, oh, this is the foundations of this I'm seeing formed here.
Which is kind of weird because like Stephen King didn't really like write a lot of sequels to any of his books.
No.
It's mostly just the Gunslinger got like a whole series to itself, but
Yeah, but see the gunslinger is the like the center of the multiverse that all these stories. There's a video on YouTube somebody did. It's called the Stephen King Multiverse Explained in 9 minutes or something. And it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it's also like, oh, okay, yeah, I kind of know all this already. But yeah, if anyone's interested, it's like there.
But yeah, he always reuses stuff, so it's like there's always something familiar from every book in his other books.
Yeah,
because like Derry's always a constant, like evil town in a lot of his books.
Yeah, Derry became a character almost in it.
Yeah,
like the so that's the thing that Stephen King does a great job. This is where Stephen King's wonderful and fun to read because he does a great job fleshing out all his characters. And he even has elaborate stories for minor characters that might just have a walk-on part in the fourth act, but you know all about them. So that's like, because when they say like Salem's Lot, a lot of people, didn't like it because they thought it was too tedious in its setup. But it's like, well, that's every Stephen King book after this. It's like, so that if you don't like that, then you're probably not going to like
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, I mean, sometimes it's like a bit overwrote. Sometimes where it's like, here's this minor character, here's their hopes and dreams, here's their fears, and here's how it's all gonna ironically come together to meet their demise or success, whatever.
Right. It's like the character. It's like the Dud Rogers character that worked at the city dump,
Yeah.
and basically like to start things on fire and shoot rats, and then was lusting after, I don't know if it was a younger girl or just a girl, but he was like always obsessed with her, but he called her a slut. And this guy, when they get turned into vampires, like they end up together later, but they have there's like nothing going on between them because now they have this whole new vampire thing going on. And that's an example of like, yeah, that's the Stephen King like whole character experience there, where it's like, yeah, this guy like was a creepy character that took up like 15 pages, and then like again a walk-on part near the end, like, oh, okay. But it was a way to establish like, oh, these were these people before the vampires, and this is the town now, and the changes in them. It's like, oh, that's
Yeah.
really good,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
works. But some people don't have patience for like, what was the whole Dud Rogers thing about the rat shooting pyro who wanted to, had some unwholesome obsession with this girl. It's like, yeah, it doesn't really pay off until the end. Oh yeah,
What?
no, yeah. Oh, she's a high school student. So yeah,
Uh,
okay. This is yeah.
um, what was there? Was that there's one character, the lady's having an affair with like the telephone repairman guy,
Yeah.
and but then like that couple like leaves town. Doesn't he just like rape her until he dies of a heart attack or something? Am I remembering something? I'm remembering
Yeah,
that
I don't
correctly.
remember that. I remember, see, that was kind of like, that was one of these character condensations that happened in the movie versus the book. Is
Yeah.
like, yeah, he's the telephone repair guy. She was fooling around with another guy. And there was also, they had a baby that she would hit when it cried when her husband wasn't there.
All right. Yeah.
And then he catches him cheating because, of course, he's the phone guy. So he just like listens in somewhere. And then he shows up and makes the guy put the shotgun in his mouth.
Yeah.
And the guy craps in his pants and stuff and passes out. And this guy's laughing. Yeah, it's like you have that whole setup. And then and they live in a trailer park or something. And then you have that whole setup. And then you don't hear about that again till the end. Because it's like, oh, the baby's a vampire too.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Drank its blood, and now you got baby vampire, and it's like, let's drag him out in the sun. And then it's like, well, that's too horrible and slow. They just crawl back in because the vampires in this act more like zombies. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're not like, the oh, I'm charming, I'm a literate man from the past. No, they're just those people. And let's see, there's another guy. I like the Father Callahan because at the time it was written, it's like, oh, a priest that's struggling with his faith and he's a drunk.
Yeah.
Nowadays, that's like a what do you call that? Like a cliche. Back then, it's like, that's sort of
Stephen King's taking a shot at the faith.
Yeah. But I like Callahan's end story where he's like forced to renounce his faith or be killed by Barlow.
Yeah.
And then has to drink some of Barlow's blood, and then he just like takes a train out of town. Like, I can't deal with this. I'm out of here. And that's it. Like that's the Callahan arc. But it's like, he's kind of a cool character. Just as again, another one of these things that you build up, and he's kind of.
Well, that's like a fun thing about like the people, like the protagonists in the book, is that like none of them are meant to like fight vampires. I mean, nobody is. But it's like, we got a drunk priest, we got a book writer, we got a kid, we got a doctor who's like had a heart attack recently, or not a doctor, the school teacher, and then I guess the doctor's all right. Yeah, and then the court, but then like the sheriff just like heads out, like the person who's supposed to be handling this stuff is like, I'm getting out of this town.
Nope. And see, that's what because like, if I was one of those characters, like the priest or the town marshal or whatever, and someone like convinced me like, there's vampires here, weird shit's going on. It's like, all right, see you later. As a person, it's like, I'm not sticking around for this. It's like, no, good luck. I'm sorry. I mean, I can deal with the drunks and the rousing the guys out of the taverns and stuff, and maybe someone trying to rob the bank or breaking into someplace. Supernatural, weird death stuff. No, I'm sorry, it's over. And that's I saw that as being like realistic in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. It's like, yeah, this is how people would really react, but because they're side characters, you get to see that, and
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, this makes sense, as opposed to like the main characters, like, yeah, let's light out. It's like, well, that was a depressing story. They just fled. Oh, let's see, who else have we not kind of talked about? Everyone. Um, trying to find, going through my notes here, because we have like,
Well,
again,
yeah, you have a lot of setup in the first, like, you have a kid that gets killed or dies of, like, basically like anemia.
yeah, the Glicks. There's
Yeah.
two brothers, Danny and Ralphie Glick.
And then, like, everybody's like sad about that. It's like, oh, these kids are dying, and then like bodies start disappearing too.
Yeah.
And then of course, like, it's the classic protagonist thing where it's like the protagonist comes to town, he gets wind of this stuff and starts to put things together, and so he's like present at every bad thing happening in town. They're like, you're the problem.
Yeah,
although him and Straker do get fingers pointed at them, but the town sheriff seems to have extra hate for Ben for some reason.
Yeah, Gillespie's like he's like one of those guys that like probably saw some stuff in World War II or something.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna keep this town calm no matter what it takes. No matter who I have to accuse, and I'm just gonna use my simple logic. Not because I'm stupid, but because I just want to keep it simple. And then like again, you have what I call the Stephen King, the logical child. It's Mark Petrie.
Yeah.
Who just happens to really be into, his parents are really smart. Like, his dad's an investment banker and his mom does something, and they're kind of like proper. I think they're like the rich people in town. And his son is like super smart, but he's into like, vampires and horror, kind of the 50s genre Wolfman stuff based on the models and things he has around his room. But he also, like, has this like visionary intelligence and ability to see through things and just take things as fact that other people would like, no, that can't be happening.
Well, he's also just super well read.
Yeah.
Because that's how he's able to escape. He's able to do some like escape tricks because he was like interested in Houdini and just read everything about it.
Yeah, that's how he could get out of like cuffs. But when one of the creepiest scenes I've ever seen in a movie was, like, I forgot it came from this movie, was when one of the Glick kids was floating outside his window.
Yeah.
And he was like, let me in or whatever. And he like, because the vampires can hypnotize you and you're not supposed to let him in your house, but he does freak out because someone's actually floating outside his window. He lets him in, but then he grabs a crucifix off his graveyard scene and holds it up because he knows, like, oh, this is a vampire and this stops the vampires. That was in the book. It was kind of the same as the movie. Like, it was very I don't know how you'd say it. Very like cinematic almost. And even in the book, it's like, yeah, that's terrifying because that's
especially how he describes like the scritching on the door. And they do that in the movie too.
Yeah. And then you have his old high school teacher, Matt Burke, who he relates to, and he's read Ben's book, but he's willing to listen to kind of go outside of what's normal. Because at first it just becomes like okay, bad things are happening in town. It's like we got Ben Mears, who's like sort of a native son, but he's been gone for a while and we're suspicious of him. But Barlow and Straker, especially Straker, who opens the antique shop and buys the Marston house for $1 because they're going to fix it back up. It was like, this is obviously a bad guy to everyone. It's like, really weird stuff didn't start happening until this creep showed up.
Yeah.
And, it was, I do like,
Well, yeah, that one guy who's like jealous of Susan because she's dating Ben, and so he like knocks Ben out. So like Ben's like out of action for like a bit in the book.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean it's like oh, I'm trying to figure out like how to say it. It's just kind of, yeah, it's a bunch of small town characters reacting as people probably would to really weird stuff going on.
yeah,
And the reason, like the only reason that the only suspension of disbelief you have here is like, yeah, they're not calling in outside forces because they're just this closed community, and it's like we don't want anything bad or weird to happen here. Um, so it's like, because they didn't have the internet or anything back then, but they had telephones.
yeah.
You think someone would be on the phone to the state police? It's like, yeah, corpses are getting up and walking, and
Yeah, but
people are
they're just too afraid to try to explain it, so they don't tell anybody.
yeah, it's like that small town mentality. It's like, you might think I'm nuts, but you can come here and see for yourself. You know, that's oh
But then you have at some point like Mark goes to the Marston house to try to like kill vampires, and then Susan is like they meet up along the way. Not intentionally, this like happened upon the same thing at the same time.
yeah,
And that's when they go in the house and Straker gets the kid and ties him up, and then the kid's able to get out but like kill Straker, and then he hears like Susan getting like grabbed and like made a vampire, but he only hears it. You don't see it.
yeah. Susan gets a short shrift in this novel.
Yeah.
It's like she becomes like his love interest. She's smart. She's introspective, and it's, oh, she's a vampire.
Yeah.
And it's like, ah, okay. And then in the book, she just kind of like just gets killed, and it's like,
Well,
okay.
I mean, the book they make Ben kill her. It's like,
Yeah.
you're close. You're the one that has to do it.
Yeah, it's your job, you know. And the killing is like actually just hammering a stake into somebody's body, which
Yeah.
is like, in the movies they make it seem like tick tick, I'm dead. It's like, yeah, in real life that would be like horrifying. It's, hold still. I'm trying to pound this piece of wood through your heart, through your sternum, a piece of wood. It's like, yeah, it can
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, they make it, although they in the 2004 one, they make it more like that, where how hard it is. Well, they don't do it to Susan, they do it to a different character. And they have like the bat stakes, and so he's shoving one end of the bat stake, and then the other guy has a bat, and he's like hitting the stake on the end like it's a chisel.
Okay, yeah, it's probably closer to it would actually be. So yeah, she gets kind of like short shrift.
Oh, it's weird. Like apparently Straker has like supernatural powers. He's also bald in the book and not in any other ones.
Yeah, like in the TV show, he's like he is the villain in the TV
Yeah.
show.
Yeah,
And
because
that
like
guy was like a big deal English actor, I guess they got for this. So.
Yeah, because Barlow, is that right? The big vampire.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the makeup was too extensive, and so they didn't have him talk because it probably would look weird, and so they have Straker talk for him in the TV movie.
Yeah.
So Straker doesn't die like he does here in the book. So.
No.
But yeah, and there's just more stuff where it's like the town's just kind of slowly falling apart, and people are either figuring it out or they're being turned into vampires.
Yeah.
Um,
And Richard Straker has a weird name because his full name is Richard Throckett Straker. And Throckett is a word that comes up later in Stephen King's books for it's for like an evil place or a spoiled place.
oh, okay.
So I don't know, like,
And
I think they pronounce it differently, but yeah.
And then is that his actual real name, or is like, do you think he's changed it over the years, or like how long do you think he's been alive?
I have no idea. It doesn't really go into it.
Okay.
But I know, like he says, like, because Straker says at one point that Marston contacted Barlow in the 50s. And these guys, like when Gillespie calls the state police to have a background check run on them, they say like, yeah, they started a antique shop after World War II or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, that's kind of where their trail starts, but before that, it was all lost in the war or whatever. And so yeah, I don't know, but apparently a long time. I see. That's the thing. Like they seem to follow vampire rules in this from Dracula
Yeah.
about like you don't let them in the house. If you revoke your invitation, they have to leave. Crucifixes and stakes, which are, I mean, and they have holy water too, but they don't get into the garlic and stuff and like a lot of ritual. But they follow basic vampire rules.
Although I do like to have in the book they have like when you make a cross, pretty much just out of anything, like it'll glow in the presence of a vampire.
Yeah, that's like weird.
Which they don't do that in the other versions.
No.
Although they did in the TV movie, they had like glowing holy water.
Yeah. Glow. Yeah. And a weird like Kirchhoff radiation effect. Yeah, and like his English teacher Matt, like the guy who's the graveyard keeper, like his dog gets killed, and he's kind of like a sad. I think is he a drunk too, or just like a sad? I know, like his dog was his best friend.
Yeah.
Apparently, Straker or Barlow killed it on some night. They don't know who, but it's like, and then he becomes like when they bury one of the Glick kids. I can't remember which one. Like he like hears from inside because he's burying the coffin, and he's like, "Oh, I'm drawn to the coffin," and he becomes like bitten by one of the Glick boys. And then he goes to Matt's house, or they find him somewhere, and they're like, "Oh, you look like shit," because the doctor says everyone's dying from anemia.
Yeah,
which is like, oh, okay, but it's like it's being treated like a disease. But then Matt and Ben are like, Matt's checking out books from the library about vampires and this history and all this stuff, and he's like, "Oh, I think this is something else."
And they're able to convince Dr. Cody that something's going on, and he can't necessarily like, well, I don't know, I can't necessarily say like this is vampires, but we're gonna operate as if that's true.
Yeah, I do kind of like that. Like as a man of science, I can't say that that's real because it's obviously horseshit. But in absence of other evidence, it's like this is what it's gonna be, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Matt brings the guy. I forget his name. He brings the guy to his house. Like, we're gonna go see the doctor tomorrow, but you sleep at my house tonight, and then. Like this is where the guy wakes up as a vampire in his upstairs thing, and this is when like I rebuke my I rebuke you, I rebuke my invitation. The guy just has to leave the house. He like floats out the window.
Yeah.
But then Matt has a heart attack, as one would if something like that happened. And then he goes to the hospital, and you're like, oh, what's gonna happen? And it's like he just dies.
Oh, does he die in the hospital? I thought he died later. I thought he died another heart attack later on. I can't remember. Possibly.
Well, he had already had one heart attack, I guess, in class, like years earlier. Okay. So he was known to have.
Because I thought that aspirin conversation happens in the hospital between him and Dr. Cody after the heart attack. But
yeah, that could be.
Sorry, but also, like I said, I've watched too much Salem stuff, so it's all blended together because everybody did different things with all these characters. So.
Yeah, I'm just pulling the stuff out of the book, and I might be even skipping some detail. I'm just going off the top of my head about things I remember. We're not doing this in any particular order.
But it ends up with Ben and Mark basically have to I think Dr. Cody's there too.
Yeah, Dr. Cody, they go to the Marston house again, and because they're gonna kill Barlow.
Oh wait, is that the Marston house, or is that at the place with the pool thing in it?
No, that's where they actually kill Barlow.
Oh, later. Okay.
But they go to the Marston house, which of course is like tricks and traps, because they basically saw the steps to the basement down to the last nub.
Yeah.
And then as soon as Dr. Cody steps on him, he falls onto like punji stick steak knives they've made in the floor, and he just dies getting impaled. And Ben and the young boy Mark. Yeah, Ben and Mark they get kind of screwed up because I think one of them falls but doesn't hit the knives, and the other one's like, I got to get out of the basement, so I have to stack boxes up. because they're desperately trying to get out of the basement. And then that's where you find out that Susan is actually in Barlow's coffin, and that's where she gets killed.
Right. Yeah.
Which is like, it's a really dark scene because it's all of a sudden like the doctor's impaled. I was like, God, is anyone gonna live? I mean, you kind of know from the prologue that like that Mark and Ben are gonna live, obviously,
Yeah.
but you don't know like anyone else is gonna live. And it's like, oh yeah, everyone's slowly being eliminated. And then in the book, like Gillespie, he's not leaving. He doesn't have a wife and kids in the book, I don't think. He's just like locked up in his house, and Ben's at his door, like, "What are you going to do about this? This is what you're here for." And he's like, "I'm not doing anything. I am staying in my house because I can't. I'm not equipped to deal with this. I'm a simple man, and this is beyond my understanding." Because he calls him a coward, and he's like, "Yeah, say whatever you want." It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna end up, like everyone else, even though I think he does. Um, and that's what's the other horrible thing. Oh, the other horrible shit from the book is the Glick parents, especially the mom, like because they have to bury like two kids in 3 days.
Yeah.
And they're only children, and like she's just like incapacitated by this. And the dad's like, come on, you gotta, we gotta get this together. But yeah, they're just slowly disintegrating, as people.
Well,
And
also
she
in
ends up
this,
getting bit, and then I think she kills her or bites her husband or whatever.
we have Barlow kills Mark's parents, and it's like vividly described in the book where he basically smashed their heads together and they're just like merged into one almost. And like, but like in the TV movie, it's just kind of like bonk.
Yeah, it's like nobody's skull caved in or anything. Like, just wake up, Dad.
But yeah, then eventually they figure out like, we have the priest kind of trying to get back after. Wait, yeah, that's the way. Yeah, where his parents get killed. That's where the Barlow kind of he captures Mark, and he negotiates with the priest where he's like, this kid, it's like your service for this kid or whatever, and that's when he makes the priest drink from it, and then when he goes to try to go back into his church, the door like electrocutes him.
Oh yeah.
And that's when he just like hops on a bus out of town, which I don't know if like that's what he chose to do or if that's like some weird plan where it's like, if it doesn't work out here, we're gonna start up vampires other places. But I don't know if he can make vampires.
No, he was just because in the Wolves of the Calla where he shows up again, he just like he said he lost his faith when he did. That was an act of like because if he really had faith, he could have just stopped Barlow. He didn't even need to cross.
Yeah,
He could have just like said, God is I'm God's servant, and just like stopped him. Like if you had a powerful enough faith, you didn't even need symbols and stuff. And he taking Barlow's blood to save Danny, it was a rebuke of his faith, but he later gets it back because he realizes, well, I better pick a side. And so because like he was never like a vampire or anything, he was just like taking his blood into him, but not being bit by him was just made him into a corrupt thing.
well, I mean, it seemed like in the book he was supposed to replace Straker after he died, but
Yeah.
at least how I was guessing.
Yeah, that could have been like part of the plan, but that didn't. He just kind of left and didn't appear again 28 years later in another book as like, yeah, I redeemed myself to God. So he was not affected by that. After he had to go to a parallel universe, and there's a whole story there. But it's like, yeah,
it's on during daytime, but Ben and Mark go and find Barlow and go to kill him, but it's all like it's not easy because it's like they're basically being psychologically messed with the entire time.
Yeah,
and you can't look into a vampire's eyes, so like it's like so one person's getting distracted at one time because always somebody's looking at the vampire's eyes.
Yeah, don't look in their eyes because that's how they get you.
And they're able to stake and kill Barlow, but that doesn't, like in other fictions, it's like if you kill the head vampire, everybody else returns to normal. Like, not here.
No, just a virus.
Yeah, and
See,
so
what's the other weird? There's a remember the bus driver in the
yeah,
book? Yeah, and he gets like he's an asshole to all the kids all the time, and then he just gets torn apart by vampire kids on his bus
yeah.
because they're all just sitting on the bus. And yeah, I thought that was an interesting. Like, oh, okay, never made it to the movie, but yeah.
They did put it in the 2004 one, but
Oh, did they? Okay.
yeah. Yeah, there's one weird part where when Straker is like captured Mark and he has him like tied up and he's just like, Mr. Barlow will have intercourse with you. It's like, is that like making him a vampire, or is he saying he's gonna have sex with that kid? It's like,
Yeah,
either way, it's a nightmare.
I kind of wondered. It's like, well, it's a lot of bad options here. But no, the way Straker speaks, that's probably like just like some doesn't mean the same thing to him because God knows he could be 200 years old.
Yeah.
Because there's like cities in America named Intercourse, and like
Yeah.
now it's funny, but back then it meant like commerce and trade, or
Yeah.
it's like you'd never name a city Intercourse now.
And then I got an epilogue that was basically like Mark and Ben hunting the vampires that were left in Salem's Lot. And there's like, and they have like news stories that pop up and it's like, this is what's happened in Salem's Lot, which apparently it's like there's news coming out of Salem's Lot, but like nobody goes there. They know to avoid it. No one's saying it's full of vampires, but then they go back to try to kill all the vampires. But I don't know if that's different from the one you're talking about, because this also the audio.
That's the same thing.
Okay, because this audiobook also has a foreword by Stephen King.
So. Oh, okay.
But he was just talking.
No, that's what happens. I mean, well, because I like how Ben and Mark are like they're working it out. So like after they killed Barlow, it's like let's kill the rest of the vampires, and they find out like you can only operate during the day.
Yeah.
And like they come up with this idea, and they're basically in some kind of torporous zombie state during the day. They're not like active, and they're like, let's just pull them out in the sun. And you think, well, in a lot of movies, they just like explode, and it's like, okay, that doesn't happen. They just like slowly smoke,
Yeah,
and then just crawl back underneath the trailer or whatever, crawl back into the house, and it's like, well, that's horrible. I don't think we want to do that. And then just decide we're gonna just cut bait and head down to Mexico.
Well, it's also like they kind of make the vampires seem more like zombies. Actually, it's kind of the comparison is rats, because I think the one guy says he sets fire to the dump to make the rats skitter out of their holes,
right.
And like they're basically doing the same thing with the vampires here, setting things on fire, and watching them try to go to another hole.
Yeah.
So there's that comparison.
But they don't seem to have the. For some reason, they just don't have the stomach for it, and the whole town's dead. This kid's parents are dead.
Yeah,
his girlfriend's dead. Like all their friends are dead. It's like let's just go to Mexico or whatever, trying to hide out, and then they do come back and burn the whole town down. That does happen again, because in the what is it? Like in the two. One for the road, they say, because these are the people who live the town over from Salem's Lot, or Jerusalem's Lot's what they call it, almost exclusively. And they're like, there was a big fire 2 years ago. And it's like, no one goes there anymore. And like the people in the next town, they know what's going on, but they're just like, we just don't deal with it.
And there's stuff revealed that make it sound like either like Barlow was like making people evil like over the phone or something, or he was like in town before doing stuff with Marston, but they make it sound like he's been there before and done things before. But
well, he's had some influence over Mark, and also like again outside the book, but in later Stephen King stuff, it's like you find out like vampires are real. They all serve the Crimson King, and the Crimson King's main like force of evil is not in your face horror and dissolving people with acid and stuff, but it's always corruption. It's like, what do you want? what can I give you to make you do something that just will lead to your demise and the demise of others around you, because that's what I feed on. And that's what vampires are. They're just like forces of corruption that serve a greater evil in the multiverse. And so yeah, there's like, it's hinted around here but not fleshed out yet. Like, yeah, this guy's always had a connection to evil places, and the Marston house was an evil place, and it was an evil place because of Barlow's influence over Marston.
Yeah.
Through notes and telegraph or carrier pigeon, who knows? But yeah, it's all about, you not having any choice in your life because you're just fated by either your own personal lacking or whatever. It's like evil can find a way into you that way. And then and then in like Stephen King books, it becomes less metaphoric and more realistic, but also it serves like a purpose, because everything's a battle of good and evil in the Stephen King universe. But it's not always clear like who's good and who's evil or what their motivations are.
We have our first adaptation of this was got released in 1979. It was a CBS miniseries. It was originally supposed to be a movie, and I think who's the Night of the Living Dead guy?
Okay. Yeah, the guy. Yeah.
No, I'll get it. George Romero was supposed to direct the movie, but apparently they cut it down to they wanted it to be a miniseries, and so he left it because he was like, I want to make an R-rated Salem's Lot movie. And it's like, let's make it a TV miniseries. He's like, nope.
Yep, bye.
Which I thought, that's the thing about the movie. Like, it's a fine adaptation, but like it really is not as gruesome as the book because it's a TV show.
Yeah, it has like a lot of jump scare type stuff, but nothing real like. Yeah, it's very PG.
Yeah.
But it had to be. I mean,
so it was released in 1970.
Carpenter almost was slated to direct this.
Oh.
But he wanted to do something else because he did something, A Stranger's Calling or something like for CBS a year before.
Oh yeah. We also directed an Elvis TV movie.
Yeah, he did.
But I mean, even though this came out in '79, which is like last week's movie, we covered Moonraker. That's when that came out. So around the same time here. Remember, Alien came out around the same time. We got Apocalypse Now. But this, like, because it's shot for TV, it looks extremely old, even though it's '79.
Yeah.
It was directed by Tobe Hooper, who's of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre fame.
Yep.
Although if you watch Red Letter Media, like it's Jay on there always gives like almost seemingly too much credit to Tobe Hooper. He kind of feels like everything he did was misunderstood and he just had a hard luck time in Hollywood. And I think you can see that because Texas Chainsaw Massacre was extremely influential and came out before Halloween even, and he's not really considered like on John Carpenter's level. And then like you read stories about Poltergeist, and apparently he was on drugs a lot, and so a lot of people attribute Steven Spielberg as more directing that movie than Tobe Hooper did.
Yeah.
Also, Steven Spielberg was one of his first produced movies, and he's like in between making E.T., and so I guess he just had a lot of time in his hand. He was kind of overproducing Poltergeist. So
right.
Combined with a drug addiction, Steven Spielberg having some free time, they collaborated on Poltergeist.
Well, and also Stephen King wrote the screenplay for Poltergeist.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Oh, yeah. He had a lot of say in that.
Well, also, Tobe Hooper, he directed The Mangler, which is also another Stephen King short story.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the was that about the that was the one with the guy from Nightmare on Elm Street,
Robert Englund.
Robert Englund was the like corrupt guy who owned the factory. Ted Levine was the cop. Famous Ted Levine.
Um, Paul Monash wrote the screenplay based on the Stephen King book, obviously. We got David Soul as Ben Mears, who was Hutch in Starsky and Hutch,
Yep.
which might have ended this year because like I see the 79's the last year of Starsky and Hutch, so I'm not sure if it's around that time. We have Bonnie Bedelia as Susan. You might remember her mostly as Holly McClane from from Die Hard, which is she's a working actor. She's been doing stuff every year since. You just kind of just don't know about it. Like she's in an Amazon series called Panic currently.
Yeah. It's also Macaulay Culkin's aunt.
It was funny. I was looking up stuff. She did a Lifetime TV show, detective TV show. It was like a group of female police detectives in San Francisco, and she was like the captain of it. It was also like one of the first big things that John Hamm ever did. That was like his first big thing.
Okay.
It was called The Division.
Okay.
But it was on Lifetime, so of course I never saw it.
Yeah, her full name is Bonnie Bedelia Culkin.
Huh.
I did not know that she was Macaulay Culkin's aunt until I looked up just the movie and stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, she's been doing stuff ever since, it's kind of working. I mean, I'm not sure, like, they don't seem to be like big media roles, but she's just still working. But,
yeah, she's 75, so good for her.
The Constable Gillespie was played by Kenneth McKillen.
I kept waiting for him to start floating around. The spice will flow.
Yeah, he plays Baron Harkonnen in the Dune movie. We got Fred Willard in here as Larry Crockett. That's a fun.
Yeah, that was interesting. It took me a minute to be like, wait a minute. That's.
There's George DeZunza as Cully Sawyer, which he's interesting because like this is in '79, but I probably think I remember him. He was like the XO in Crimson Tide.
Yep. He was really young in this, I'm sure.
Yeah, because he doesn't look
76 now. Oh, he would have been like he's late 20s.
Yeah, because he doesn't look that much different from when he's in Crimson Tide. So
no, he always looks the same. He's Ukrainian and Polish. He was born in Germany.
But yeah, this movie's all right. It's just it's tame compared to the book, and they had to bring things down. Some of the effects and stuff in it are kind of goofy, but they don't seem like that different from other television productions at the time.
No.
They did some weird stuff with when they're filming the kid floating through the window, where they film it like backwards, so it looks all weird, and the smoke's being sucked away rather than going forward. So that's kind of interesting. The look of Barlow is like, yeah, it looks frightening and very Nosferatu-esque, but like, that guy he can't do anything but just look still. He can't do anything with the makeup.
Yeah, he can't talk or anything.
Although they did take that imagery and it's slapped on all the Salem's Lot like books later on.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So they did take that imagery. There's a lot of combination characters. So like, I think they get rid of Dr. Cody and they just make the doctor Susan Norton's dad, and then they combine that together. The kind of epilogue and the prologue is when they're in like Ben and Marker and Guatemala, and they're looking for the priest, and then the epilogue is them like killing him in Guatemala because he's like he's spreading the evil. But like, that's, like I said, that doesn't happen in the book, although they do that both in this and the 2004 version.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a lot of combination characters. It pretty much does everything. And but the big moment where like he has to kill Susan, they kind of like put that towards the end here.
Yeah.
Rather than the middle, which kind of makes sense in a way. Because there's like hope that like, oh, if we kill the head vampire, maybe she's still alive. But nope. One final injustice.
And you had James Mason played um,
Oh, is it Straker?
Straker.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that guy's been acting since 1933.
yeah. Yeah, he does a fine job. He definitely sounds like a foreigner, a weird foreigner.
Yeah,
He does that stuff, and he's like, and there's always there's a thing throughout all the fictions where it's like, even in the book where it's like they're like, oh, is Straker and Barlow gay? Is that what they do?
yeah.
Um,
Doesn't Gillespie have something? This says, oh, are they one of those or
yeah,
something? Yeah, he has a weird.
which there's a lot of like homophobia in the Stephen King book, but it's only spoken by just absolutely abhorrent people.
Yeah, it's hateful character. None of the main characters are like, oh, we got
No.
to get in there and ram stakes into those guys, spreading corruption.
Well, you have like Ben is like kind of like because I think at some point there's like some gay couples killed in a bar, and it's like, why can't they just let people be themselves? Um, so that's why.
Oh, by the way, James, the guy who played Straker worked with Alfred Hitchcock and Stanley Kubrick. He was in Lolita and North by Northwest,
Oh, okay. Huh.
and he was a conscientious objector in World War II.
Ah.
It's kind of an interesting fact about the guy.
Yeah, it's a perfectly fine adaptation. There's a lot worse adaptations of Stephen King. So.
Oh yeah, this is like a winner compared to a lot of stuff that's been done in his name.
The 2004 one, I'd say like it's much meaner, grittier. It has a pretty good cast. You got Andre Braugher as Burke. You got Rob Lowe as Ben Mears, who, like, you don't necessarily like think of him as like a writer, but he does. They give a voiceover in that one. He does a good job with the voiceover. But you wouldn't think like Rob Lowe, he's a writer. But what you do think is like, oh, I think women would just be immediately infatuated with him, and other men would be jealous about it. So that totally makes sense for that character. We got Donald Sutherland as Richard Straker, which is great. And also it's like Donald Sutherland is in like almost every Stephen King adaptation, is just kind of this connecting evil force throughout them.
Yeah, he does do that a lot.
You got Samantha Mathis as Susan. Well, you might know her in things. She's not necessarily the greatest actor, but you know, she was Princess Peach in the Super Mario Brothers movie. She was in Broken Arrow. She was like the
Ranger.
Yeah. And you got Rutger Hauer as Kurt Barlow, and he's just like an evil guy. They don't put him in weird makeup or anything. So
Does he have like weird dialogue like he?
Oh yeah. And then James Cromwell as Father Donald Callahan. So
that actually sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it's it works. It's like I think it's in some ways it's better than the 71. Actually, in a lot of ways they do truncate things and make things different. And there's one because instead of like having Ben get knocked out by the jealous boyfriend or ex-boyfriend, they have him like have a fight and they both get arrested and they're like in opposite jail cells, and he's like turning into a vampire in the other jail cell, and he like crawls his way into like the vent, and you can see him like make it super weird because he has to get invited into the jail cell, so his like face like pressed up against the grate, and he's like, invite me in. It's like,
oh god,
I was like, oh, that's a pretty nice adaptation. that's interesting. That's fucking weird as shit. But yeah, I thought it was and then but this one, it's again, they had to do the thing where it's like they're chasing down Callahan at the end, and the end is like they get Callahan, but then Ben is like in the prologue, he gets shot by Callahan, and so then he like dies at the end, and Mark is able to kill Callahan. He does it like an interesting way where like he suffocates him with a pillow, because Callahan isn't a vampire, but he just still drank the blood, so he's like, you know, weird. But he hooks up all his vitals to some guy in the next bed, so nobody knows that he killed him.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of interesting. And then like the kid like gets out of there. He gets like caught by like the like one of the doctors, and like the kids like basically trying to, and and like the whole time Rob Lowe was telling or Ben was telling the story to this doctor. He's like, yeah, that's a that's an amazing story. I don't believe any of it. And at the end, like the doctor says, like basically like, I can't honestly believe in this, but I'm gonna let you go because those strange things has happened that I can't explain. So
Yeah.
and then Ben dies. The camera like pulls away infinitely as they roll the credits. Well, yeah, he's dying, so they're trying to revive him, and that's like the end of it. But also TNT has done a lot of adaptation. This came out in 2004. They've done a lot of adaptations of Stephen King stuff. Like they did, was it Kingdom Hospital, or what's the Stephen King hospital one?
I think is it Kingdom Hospital?
I can't remember. Is that too on the nose?
Yeah, probably.
There's like a short story thing that they did an adaptation of a long time ago, and they've done stuff since. But now the Stephen King stuff has moved to Hulu, I think, or it's been split, because you have a Hulu of, what do they call it? Castle Rock.
Yeah.
And so Salem's Lot stuff shows up in Castle Rock, but just like little bits. There is a new show on Epix that came out last year. It's a prequel series called Chapelwhite with Adrian Brody.
Okay. Interesting.
And there's a new movie coming out next year of Salem's Lot, which people you kind of know, but no big names are attached to it. But it's coming out next year, and it's just a feature film. It's supposed to come out in April. So yeah, this story has been adapted into lots of things.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if like, are they just getting like the sandwich of Stephen King's name and like vampire genre, and then just hoping the thing in between is tasty enough that people will buy it?
Well, it certainly seems like it. It seems like there's I don't know. There seems to be like a.
So why do you think they just keep coming back to it?
Because I think like the one they did in the '79. I think it was just like, well, we got to get this out. We bought the options of this for, we have to produce it eventually. I think they didn't do a bad job for a TV thing. I think since then, there seems to be this thing about we're going to go with safe properties.
Yeah.
And I think this like, oh, Stephen King's a bankable name. People have heard of Salem's Lot. Maybe they'll watch it. But, I don't know.
So
again,
what do you think the public zeitgeist is? What do people who haven't read Salem's Lot think they know about Salem's Lot? Do they think it's just a vampire thing or what?
Yeah, I think they imagine it's a vampire thing. And with all the stuff that has been done with vampires since then as romantic figures or whatever, I think they're like, oh yeah, I remember that. Like, yeah, Barlow falls in love with Susan and they live in a small town. I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking about it, because with the Stephen King, over it, it's there's this thing with bankable properties and with Hollywood movies and now TV and streaming services. I think people are just like, yeah, let's snap up the rights to that. Maybe we'll get it right this time. Maybe we'll put a spin on it that'll actually sell this. And so far, it doesn't sound like they've done it. But
yeah, I've heard like very mixed things about Castle Rock. I didn't hear any good thing about the Stand adaptation, the new one.
Tried the '90s TV show constrained by a TV budget that I think had 7 episodes as a mini series. It was like huge back then.
Yeah,
it was much better than the one they spent a lot more money on, had a lot more name actors in, because I think that was Gary Sinise became well known because of that '90s Stand.
Yeah,
and like I said, if you watch that now, you realize, well, they did pretty good considering it looks like they had no budget really, or they had to spread out the budget over such a huge production. Yeah, the new one was not any good.
I mean, that new It was huge financially. Some people seem to like at least the first one and not so much the second one. I didn't watch either of them. But
I've seen them. It was like neither here nor there.
Okay.
The '90s mini series with like the cast of Night Court and some other people. I think it actually told the story a little better.
Yeah.
Of course, it left a few things out like the new ones did, but they, I think that they did a good job. I mean, the trouble with Stephen King is like it seems like he's always had this weird up and down. Like, well, yeah, this guy's a bankable. I mean, he makes money selling books, which is getting increasingly difficult. And it's like, oh, he has all these properties out there. We can option, we can modernize it, and they seem to drift so far from the story, or they just try to make some schlocky horror thing that they can cash in on real quick.
Yeah.
They slap his name on it, and because some of the adaptations of his work have been thoughtful and good, but it's I think it's like 70-30 split on the bad side.
What did you say? Like, did you say that Gunslinger was so bad you didn't even like blame the creators?
Yeah, I was just it's just like, oh well, the problem with Gunslinger with the Dark Tower
or Dark Tower, yeah.
was it was optioned by somebody because I know the guy like Ron Howard wanted to do a mini series with
Yeah.
Javier Bardem as Roland of Gilead, and then have like a lot of these big name actors. I think he was aiming for like an HBO, like that kind of quality
Yeah.
and freedom. And they looked at it and they're just like, no, 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 this is weird. This is not going to appeal to everyone. It's a strange story. So it's like someone was holding on to the option to it, and then by the time it got down to it, it's like, well, let's get some good actors. Like they had Matthew McConaughey and Idris Elba. Like both those guys are excellent actors. And it's just like, oh, let's condense this story into a 90-minute action movie. And it's like, this is like 7 books and a bunch of short stories, and you're just going to condense all this into something that was like visually interesting, but just horrifying. If you knew anything about if you knew anything about the stories, it was horrifying. If you didn't, it was just a bad movie that was weird with some good performances. But it's like, nah, it's a terrible. I mean, Idris Elba does a great role into Gilead. Matthew McConaughey as the Man in Black was completely subtly evil, like that guy was in The Gunslinger. But it was a terrible movie. Even Stephen King was like, well, this isn't how I pictured it, but because he would have to go around and do some promos for the movie because he was like, oh, this isn't exactly what I thought it would be, but it's not bad. He's just trying to be nice.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It was just, I don't know what they were thinking, but I think what they were thinking is that we're going to lose our rights to this, so we better do it.
But that HBO show they did was really good. But the thing that could change.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was one of Stephen King's darker books, The Outsider.
Yeah, The Outsider. Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
But that was produced. That was produced by HBO, so.
Oh, okay.
Had a better chance of being good.
Yeah, that's a horrifying book with a lot of terrible idea. I mean, it's good. It's very good, but it's really dark. And when I heard they were making that into a TV show, it's like, how are they going to do that? It's a terrible, depressing, awful story. But yeah, it worked. They did a good job. TV series almost managed to be as good as the book, which is unusual. They changed some things around for sure, but they did a good job, good cast, had good actors. They scripted it out well.
Were they going to do a season 2 of that? I can't remember.
Stephen King wrote a short story follow up to it with the main. Remember the character, the lady who was kind of autistic, but she had these ultra investigative skills. He wrote a short story based around her that dealt with another thing that was similar to that, but not the same. And it was just her and this thing. Okay. But it just kind of ended in a truce because it was just her. It's like, I can't fight this, but I know you exist.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it has any upcoming things. So yeah.
No, the story it was a collection of Stephen King's short stories. I forget which it was a more recent one. But yeah, that was pretty good. I mean, they're doing more quality stuff, I guess.
Yeah, but it just looks like he has so many properties; they're just all over the place.
Yeah,
and of mixed results.
Yeah, he's just getting a check. That's always been his thing with it's like, I don't know how much he's been involved in the production. I know like Maximum Overdrive was his big, like, I'm involved in the production. And that didn't work out too well. That's a,
Meaning he did a lot of coke during the
did a
production.
lot. He freely admits it too. I was gacked out of my mind. That's one of those guilty pleasure movies I'll watch occasionally. It's like, can you
Oh yeah.
believe people thought this was a good idea?
I mean, it's still like the idea of it's like terrifying, which is why I think it's like that's not necessarily the greatest movie. It's why you should remake it. Like that's apt for a remake because like imagine if you did that, but just like a far better just production of it.
Yeah.
Because like that goblin truck just like going around killing people, and you're just like reading emotions into it, even though there are totally none.
Yeah, it's just a static mask. There's nothing there.
But it works. It's like that's a movie you should remake.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's always a fun movie, but yeah, it's a stupid. I think that movie resonated with me because I lived in Arkansas when that came out, and it was like I saw it in the theater because nobody cared, and I was like, oh yeah, like everything about this movie is like this reminds me of where I live. There was probably a Dixie Boy truck stop on the edge of town. It's like, yeah, this is everything. It would actually make Arkansas better if all the machinery went nuts and started killing everyone. It would at least be interesting. But yeah. So that's one of those time and place movies for me. It's like, oh yeah, this all makes sense. Oh. But yeah, Salem's Lot. Read it. Watch it.
Yep.
Sing its praises.
There's many adaptations. Oh, and that Chapel Light thing, that's like a prequel and like not just before, it's like old timey like wooden ships kind of prequel.
Oh, okay.
Like where the evil begins or whatever.
Yeah, it's after they kill Jesus, you know.
But it specifically says based on the short story, so I don't know like the differences between the book and the short story.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, you never know what they can do with that. I mean, ever since The Hobbit, the movies, it's like, yeah, that was almost like based on a short story because they only added 15 hours of content that never existed, but still stuck with the main idea.
And what's the Amazon Lord of the Rings show? Is that supposed to be like a prequel, or is that just another retelling of Lord of the Rings?
As far as I know, that's the Silmarillion. It's the origin of the rings. But
okay.
But when you say that or you talk about it in forums, people are like, no, there's other stuff he wrote that's about. It's not really the Silmarillion exactly. But then I've heard people say this is a take on the Silmarillion. That's why it's like such a huge production. That and the Lord of the Rings was like Jeff Bezos is like a super fan of that, so he doesn't like. He's just like, I just want to do this. I haven't seen or read or watched anything about it yet, so.
No, I just like because I'm at an Internet Movie Database. And of course that's owned by Amazon. They've been pushing forward like one of the Lord of the Rings teaser trailers. So.
Yeah, I've watched those. It's like, oh, we'll see what this is. It's like the Wheel of Time started out really rough, but then it got pretty damn good. It's made so many changes to it. And it's like, how long is this going to go on as a TV show? Like, is this going to exceed Game of Thrones? So we got like 17 books to cover, but.
Yeah, it's weird with Amazon shows. Like, there's like, they have so much stuff, or like I'm watching so much other stuff on there. I just don't know what shows they have or if any of them are any good. And so, yeah, I just don't know anything about them. So I just like, oh, like, what's that? Oh, that's an Amazon show? Because like that Panic show I was talking about, like that's apparently based on a bunch of books. I think it has its second season. It looks very Squid Game, but like but it's based on a book that existed before that. But also you can compare it to Hunger Games, but just say more realistic. It's like there's young kids in a poor ass town, and they're kind of doing like stunts like on YouTube for the chance at $50,000. So it's a very low key Hunger Games. But people die and all that stuff, and there's like secret organizations in the background. So
Well, I remember I heard that like they want to make Squid Game into like a reality TV show. I heard something about that.
Yeah, they're gonna make like a game show version of it.
And it's like, what are you not understanding about dystopian hellscapes? Where it's like when The Purge. Remember when The Purge came out, like the one
Yeah,
with
Ethan
Ethan
Hawke.
Hawke. And it's like, oh, that's an interesting idea of a nightmare world that's like looks contemporary. It's no science fiction in it. It's like, oh, but this is a terrible solution to a problem, and people are like, that's a good idea. It's like you're missing the point. It's like you're not understanding the message here. It's like people are all into it. Like, I'm ready for the purge. It's like, no, you're not. You're number one, you're not. No one's ready for the purge. And number two, it's like you're not understanding the message there. It's completely flying by your head. It's like, well, in 1984, like everyone was, they seemed to have a purpose and a point. And it's like, no, we don't want to emulate 1984. It's like if someone came to me with that argument, I'd be like, "Are you insane? They've already done that in Russia. It didn't work." But yeah, it's I like when I hear they're like we should adapt Squid Game into a fun show. It's like, no, that was about a society, and that's the end of civilization when you're putting on spectacles of death and destruction, and it's real. I'm sure they're not going to actually kill people in
No.
this. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how bad it is, but it's like, yeah, when you're putting on like Roman Colosseum displays of death for real, it's like that's the end of your civilization.
Did you ever see The Floor is Lava? It's just a game show on Netflix. And
yeah, I watched one of those. You told me about it.
It's just a stupid game show, but the idea is like they have special effects when people fall down on the floor. They make it look like they fell into lava, and then they just never cut to them ever again. So the implication of the show is that those people died when they fell in the lava because you never see them again.
Yeah, it's simulated death. Right now, it's simulated death. Now, who knows where it's going? Because the thing about Squid Game, like I watched a couple of those, and like the remarkably bizarre like death, like simple games end up with people being machine gunned to death. It's like, yeah, that's visually striking, but the undertones in the story and the characters is like, oh, that's horrible. It's like, because these people are just like trying to get out of like college loans, and it's like they're not fighting, for like the honor of my family or to free my nation. It's like, no, they're playing dangerous kids games where you get your feet blown off if you don't play Twister right or whatever. And it's like, yeah, and this is like, yeah, that's like visually interesting and horrifying, but the reasons they're doing it, the actual story is terrible. It's just like The Purge. It's like, how do we solve crime and poverty? Well, we just kill all the poor people and the minorities. And people are like, that's a damn good idea. It's like, no, that is not the point. You're totally like, you're not, and you don't even have to read subtext. It's the actual point of the movie is this is horrible. Yeah. But now it's like, yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing. Maybe we should try that. It's like, no, we shouldn't. We should not try that.
Starship Troopers was a good idea.
Yeah, let's just say fascism's great. What are you kidding me? Look at they get the first cool uniforms, and
you get to vote.
Yeah, to get to vote and preach about the honor of serving your society, but never mind, the people are running it are totally corrupt and unprepared for the war. They lie about the war. People die needlessly horribly because they're not prepared.
They take those deaths, they turn it into propaganda.
Yeah, because there's no like intellectual horsepower in the society except for the purpose of like just continuing this horrid fascist regime. But it's the only thing that's ever worked in human history. If you read the book, it's even more bleak. Because Heinlein doesn't write that as like a downbeat. He's just like writing this as if like, okay, I'm showing you a picture of this world that exists in Starship Troopers. But it's like, it's not a good world, but I'm not writing it as if we're making value judgments. You, the reader, have to figure out like, oh, this is why this is messed up. But nowadays, totally lost on people. It's like, oh, that's a good idea. That looks like a simple solution to all our problems. What, mass murder and chaos? That's the solution. I mean, we've been doing that for thousands of years. It's temporarily solved problems, but it's not a good long-term thing. It's not like people act like civil war and massive violence as a 9 to 5 job, and they get to come home and have dinner with their family afterwards. It's like, you're completely out of your fucking mind if you think this is something where like you punch in like in the cartoons with the sheepdog and the wolves guarding the sheep. It's like at the end of the day, okay, see you tomorrow, Bill. Try to kill you then. Click, and you go home. No, you're like not going to have toilet paper, indoor plumbing, cars, food. It's like, good luck with that. Have fun. But yeah, so people have these weird ideas about, um, crazy solutions to problems. And I understand, like, speaking out of frustration, you might think that's a good plan, but really to evaluate it, no, it's not a good idea. But instead of doing that evaluation, it becomes like state religion or something. Like, oh, we have to do this. It's a principle of our party. But anyway,
if you liked what you heard, and how couldn't you? You can find us at anchor.fm/Verhoeven Effect, or you can go to verhoeveneffect.com. It takes you to the same place. You can rate our podcast whatever you want, but the algorithm only listens to whatever the highest rating is. Remember, you control the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't control you. We have listener support at verhoeveneffect.com, where you can support us at a monthly stipend of either 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99. You can find us at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect, Facebook at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on YouTube at American Greed Factory. You can watch both that show and this show live and unedited. And we also have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/Greed Factory. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Colin.
I'm Nathan.
Goodbye, America.